doctor's degree, JD, was earned at Washington University. Dr. Thompson served in the Peace Corps in the Philippines, and later was assistant to Representative Ray Thornton. He also practiced law in Searcy before his career at Arkansas State University. Excuse me. At ASU, he was the director of development and later served as the president of planning and institutional advancement. I sent him an email for a bio. He didn't respond, so I had to fabricate one of my own. I don't know whether that's the right term to use or not. This is what I got. In 1984, Dr. Thompson went to the University of Arkansas as assistant to the president of the university system. He also served as vice president for finance and administration, and later as vice chancellor for finance and administration at the Fayetteville campus. Dr. Thompson came to UCA in April 1st, 1988, April Fool's Day. As the institution's 7th president, he would continue this position until December 21st, 2001, serving 13 years, and was the second longest serving president in UCA history. The one who served longer was Silas Snow for 22 years, so he was there for 13. UCA was recently named by BuzzFeed, which is a media company, as one of the most beautiful campuses, the most beautiful campus in Arkansas. And that's part of his vision when he came there. One is he set on an architectural style, a Georgian architectural style, and all the new buildings had the Georgian architectural style. And also he planted a gazillion azaleas. And if you go through that campus in the spring, you see all the azaleas, and that was part of his vision. One of the buildings built was the Reynolds Performance Hall. And that was really, it is a great venue. It's not only an asset to UC, but to this community. We have many performances at the Reynolds Performance that would not have come here because not having the facilities. And also as a home of the Conway Symphony Orchestra, which is another great asset. After leaving UCA, he became chancellor of American University of Sharjah. Sharjah is one of the 7 emirates, emirates, and it's the emirate next to Dubai. He served 6 years as a chancellor there, and then went to Kuwait and served 3 years as chancellor of the American University of Kuwait. Then it took 6 months, I can't believe this, but he went to Afghanistan as the interim vice president for academic affairs at the American University of Afghanistan in Kabul. They tried to recruit me to go over there. No way. And then he went to Kosovo and became chancellor of the University of Kosovo. And now he's back home retired, and Carmen is looking for a job for him. To keep him busy. Dr. Thompson's wife, Carmen, has 2 children, Emily and son Michael, and 2 grandchildren. And Carmen, as you're well aware of, operates Carmen's Antiques downtown Conway. So I asked Dr. Thompson to talk a little about his experiences in the Middle East. Dr. Thompson?
Thank you very much, Roger. I could have made that introduction much briefer by just saying that at least until a few months ago, I am the only living, unindicted, unconvicted former president of the University of Central Arkansas. Now there are 2 of us. Tom Courtway also is, so far as I know, unindicted and unconvicted, and a former president. But there's a difference. The statute of limitations has run on me. It has not yet run on you. Probably many of you don't know that for a while, my wife and I actually had residence in Florida. In the past, I couldn't say the real reason, but it actually was that I was afraid to come back to Arkansas because I was afraid a warrant would be served on me if I crossed over into the state line. But that hasn't happened since we retired back a few months ago, and are very happy being back here in Conway, Arkansas. It's a pleasure to look out and see many of you that I've known for quite some time. It is true that the person that I have known longest in this room is James Austin Capps. You might know him as Jim Capps, but those from Girton would say James Austin Capps and his brother Billy Roy. Now, James Austin was quite a few years older than I am. I can't remember exactly, 10 or 15, I think, but he was in high school ahead of me. He lived in downtown Girton. I lived on a farm near Girton. We always walked toward town when we went squirrel hunting. And the thing I can remember about Girton is the sound of the train whistles at night when the railroad industry was prominent then in the town. And I used to listen to those train whistles, particularly when I stayed at my grandmother's, and think, one of these days I'm going to be on that train out of Girton. And indeed, I finally made it, along with most of the other people in Girton. Also, I have to say, sadly, little did I know then, though, that trip away would take me so far as the Middle East, where I spent most of the last 15 years. And I thought I would just talk a little bit about three of the countries in which I stayed during that 15 years abroad. The first was in Sharjah, the third largest emirate in the United Arab Emirates. The UAE is an anomaly as a country goes. It's a confederation of 7 emirates in a republic, but each of those 7 emirates is headed by an absolute monarch. And the council of those 7 monarchs of the individual emirates is the rough equivalent of our Congress. And the ruler from Abu Dhabi, which is far and away the richest and largest of the 7 emirates, is automatically the president of the country. The ruler of Dubai, the second largest and second richest emirate, is automatically the vice president of the country. Within their own emirates, they are absolute monarchs in a sense that Henry VIII would have envied. There is no parliament. There are only people who are appointed by the rulers, and many of which are family members. And there really is no significant challenge to their authority within the Emirates. That's something I would have liked to have had at UCA, but they just never happened. The country is, of course, dependent primarily upon oil and gas for its wealth. And indeed, the wealth is phenomenal. When I first got the job, like many of you probably now, I had never heard of Sharjah, or when I first applied for the job. And I did not know who the ruler of Sharjah was, whom I would be working for after taking the job. On the plane on the way to Dubai, I realized I don't know this guy's name. I better get this down pat before I meet him. So I spent much of the rest of my flight to Dubai saying, His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al-Qasimi, member of the Supreme Council and ruler of Sharjah. His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al-Qasimi, member of the Supreme Council and ruler of Sharjah. And indeed, I learned once I got there that every time one refers to the ruler in his presence or out of his presence, one normally does not say Your Highness or His Highness, but you say His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al-Qasimi, member of the Supreme Council and ruler of Sharjah. So as you can tell, I managed to get that phrase down pat to the point that it is firmly implanted in my memory. Of all my experiences overseas, Sharjah was probably the highlight because the American University of Sharjah was very generously funded by the ruler of Sharjah. It was his creation, the thing that he was most proud of having done for his country or his emirate, and he showered attention upon it. Now, the student body was amazingly diverse. Only about 20% of our students were Emiratis. We had many Iranians, many Indians, Pakistanis, Africans, Filipinos, people from all over the world. Many of whom were the sons and daughters of the expatriate workers in the Emirates. One of the amazing factors about the UAE is that only about 20% of the people who live there are in fact Emirati citizens. The other 80% are guest workers from all over the world. They have no rights of citizenship other than to stay, make a living, and contribute as long as they have a visa. And they can nowadays, at least in Dubai, in effect purchase permanent residence by buying real estate there, but they never acquire any of the rights of citizenship in the country. In a way, it's almost a mirror image version of the debate we're having in the United States now about immigration and what the impact of that immigration on our society is. The solution that they have reached is that you're welcome to come and stay and work for a period of time, even perhaps to stay here permanently, but you never can become a citizen. Now, that's, to be sure, not always an ideal solution, because on numerous occasions when I would talk to people who were, let's say, Pakistani or Indian, they'd never been to India. They'd never been to Pakistan, or they only went back once in a while to visit family members. So they really identified the United Arab Emirates as being their home, but they knew that they could never become citizens and never really be a part of the country. And at some point in the future, I fear that's going to have very significant consequences for the UAE and for other countries in the Gulf that basically have the same demographic pattern. But at least for now, the experiment is working. The country is prosperous. People may not have a right to have a say in the government, but they are generally satisfied with the services that government is providing to them. And sometime in our mind, I think we think of an absolute monarch as being someone to be feared. And in that context, the monarchs are respected. They in truth are respected much more than I think we in this country respect our leaders, regardless of whether you're Democrat or Republican. And certainly they would never criticize any of their rulers if they had even private misgivings about the policies that those rulers were implementing. So it's quite a different spirit and scenario from what we are accustomed to in not only criticizing but condemning our leaders freely. And it was a wonderful 6-year experience. People ask me, were you afraid? Never once was I afraid in the United Arab Emirates. People were extremely kind and decent, and I enjoy living there very much. Another thing that strikes me as a difference in our cultures, we think about political violence in the Middle East, and indeed there is a lot of political violence. But personal violence is almost non-existent. One rarely, if ever, heard of a murder in the UAE. And if one did hear about a murder in the UAE, it was a member of the expatriate communities, not an Emirati national. The level of crime is exceedingly low. Theft is virtually unheard of. And yet, and we are, of course, only too accustomed to those kind of acts of violence. On the other hand, we don't have very many acts of political violence in the United States. But in the Middle East, there, of course, is a great deal of violence because of the conflicts between countries, groups, religions, and others. After I left the Emirates, I got an opportunity to go to Afghanistan, which I thought about for some time before I decided to do that. But because it was a friend who had asked me to come, I eventually accepted and spent about 6 months there before I took a job in Kuwait. People ask me, were you afraid in Afghanistan? I don't remember a single time that I ever had the surge of fear that I've had when I realized I was about to have an automobile accident or something of that sort. But of course, it was a very different circumstance than living in the UAE. We lived in an armed complex with guards. The campus was guarded, was walled, people with submachine guns standing around at the various corners of the buildings. All vehicles were checked before they entered the campus, and we were not allowed to go shopping or out on our own at any time. We always had to be accompanied if we went out. So it was a very restrictive lifestyle. But if it weren't so war-torn, Afghanistan would be a truly beautiful and wonderful country to live in. And some of you may remember that back during the 1970s, it was a bit of a destination for hippies to go and commune with nature in Afghanistan. But now it is an incredibly war-torn country. You may have seen and heard things recently on the news. We've been involved now for 16 years. It is the longest war in U.S. history, and it seems to have no end. And if I got off onto a political version of this speech, I might say that even though I had wonderful experiences in Afghanistan and met many, many wonderful people, I don't see a solution to their problem. I don't see how we can bring a solution to their problem. And to me, it seems that we need to turn that environment over to them and the neighboring states, Iran, Pakistan, India, and try to let them resolve the difficulties there, because we obviously never can. I'm not going to talk much about Kuwait because it was very much like the United Arab Emirates, but not as nice. And so I won't focus on it. But in any event, after I left Kuwait, I got another opportunity to go to Kosovo. Now, some of you may not remember the name of Kosovo. It was a part of the former Yugoslavia. And it is the portion of that country which was predominantly Muslim. That resulting from the Turkish invasion of the Balkans in the 1500s. And so in Kosovo nowadays, which gained independence after Yugoslavia fell apart, about 90% of the population is technically Muslim, about 10% Christian. Most of the Christians are Roman Catholic, but probably 3 or 4% are Eastern Orthodox, Serbian Orthodox. And yet I think it's fair to say of Kosovo that it's a much more secular society than Arab societies are. So that whether one is Muslim or Christian would not be so evident in your personal interactions. Intermarriages between Muslims and Christians were much more common in Kosovo than it would have been in the Middle East. Kosovo Muslims drink like frogs, and many of them are not particularly religious in their personal life. In fact, frequently, many of the Muslims in Kosovo would tell me, we go to the mosque 3 times in life, once when we were born, once when we were married, and once when we died. And so it was a much more secular society. I suspect that it was brought on in part by 50 years of communism also, when there were active attempts to stamp out religious observances of any kind. There is some concern nowadays that there's an influx of some of the Islamic extremists that have been so much a problem in the Middle East. And indeed there was some evidence of that while I was there, but not to the point that we were ever concerned about our personal safety or enjoyment of life living in Kosovo. The Balkans is, however, a very volatile place, so I don't know whether the prospects for Kosovo and for the region are very optimistic at this point. Largely a matter of ethnic, religious, and other divisions within the societies that they haven't learned yet how to manage. In terms of our contribution in Kosovo, it might in some respects be called one of our success stories in intervention overseas. Other attempts having been in many instances disasters, as in Iraq. Kosovo it cost no American lives. We intervened with the use of air power, drove the Serbs out. The Kosovars declared independence, and it has been a reasonably functioning democracy ever since, although it has a lot of economic and political problems still. And so I very much enjoyed 3 years working at the American University in Kosovo, and until I woke up one morning and said, it's time to go home. And left that institution to come back and reestablish myself in Conway, Arkansas, where my wife and I have lived longer than we lived anywhere else during our many travels around the world. And with that, I would be happy to answer questions that any of you might have about the experience. Yes, sir.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how well ruled are the Emirates? I mean, in terms of normal government services, police, fire, justice system, road, trade, you know.
Somewhere between a 9 and a 10.
Okay.
It's really amazing that the society works so well in a totally non-democratic fashion, but with rulers who are indeed benevolent rulers, and societies in which there's so much social cohesion. Even though you have these huge numbers of non-Emiratis living there, they have to accept the system as it is, or they'll be kicked out. And so they generally don't cause trouble. And then the Emiratis themselves have such an incredible sense of family and tribe and nationality that there rarely is conflict. Plus, there's something in the psychological makeup, I would say, of Southern Arabs, those in the Gulf, and this is as opposed to the Iraqis and the Lebanese and the Northern Arabs. The Gulf Arabs don't like conflict, personal or otherwise. They tend to go to great lengths to avoid personal conflict. That's not true necessarily of Iraqis and Lebanese, who are more contentious. But there's something about that makes for a very cohesive government system. Now, are there faults? Do they have as much money as they need for everything they would like to do? No. In Kuwait, I would not give so high a rating to, because the political system doesn't work as well in Kuwait. But surprisingly, in the Emirates, it works amazingly. Dan?
Let me ask you real quick and get your opinion on the Saudi Arabia Qatar dispute that's going on, and I haven't heard anything new on it, so you've heard some things.
I worked for a short time in Saudi Arabia, and in many ways, the Emirates is somewhat similar to Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates are aligned with Saudi Arabia on this issue. I tend to side with Qatar on this issue because Qatar has tried to assert a role as mediating between Iran and the Arab world. And the Saudis don't like that because of the enmity between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So I tend to find myself more sympathetic with Qatar than I do with Saudi Arabia in this instance. And I would have to say too, in spite of the political rhetoric one hears in the United States, including from our own Senator Cotton, even though my heart is in the Arab world, as a political partner for the United States in the future, I think Iran is probably a much more stable force than the Arab world is. If one looks at the history of the last 50 years, the Arab world has been, as much as I loved it while living there, in constant chaos. The Iranians say a lot of nasty things about us, but have any of the terrorists been Iranians? No. They're all Sunni Arab, which of course brings into the issue Sunni versus Shia, which is a little bit like Catholic and Protestant in the Muslim world, except it's a much more vicious divide nowadays. But if you just listen to what the Iranians said, it can sound pretty bad. If you look at what they've done, not so bad. They side with Shia in Lebanon. They side with Shia in Yemen, of course. Those are their co-religionists, and they're persecuted minorities in those areas. So of course Iran sides with them. But none of the terrorists have been Iranian. They have not invaded another country. Where is the only country in that part of the world other than Israel that has had free and fair election recently? Iran. As I mentioned, many of our students at AUS were Iranian. They were the most liberal, open-minded kids on the campus. And you ask an Iranian, what's the favorite car in Iran? Can you guess? Cadillac. In fact, Iranians, more than Arabs, tend, if one gets away from the governmental level, tends to have a favorable view of the United States and really to want to be a part of the Western world.
What's the drawing power of American universities in charge of another thing?
Fundamentally, the drawing power of American education is that American universities in particular have very high reputation in the Arab world. They hold American education in high regard. And parents consider that if their kids can get an American education, their chances in life are better. And so you've had these American-style institutions that have sprung up all over the Middle East and around the world, but strangely, particularly in the Middle East, with the American University of Beirut being the grand old dame, but the American University of Cairo, the American University of Kuwait, the American University of Sharjah, the American University of Iraq. So Arabs generally, whatever they may think of U.S. governmental policy, have a high regard for American higher education and Americans in general.
You had mentioned earlier on that the crime level in the Arab Americans was extremely low, personal.
Right.
Is that because of cultural mindset that individuals that live there, or is it a product of the fact that they have a zero tolerance level and the consequences are dire?
I think it's more the first than the latter, because in the Emirates at least, now we all have images which are partially true at least, of draconian measures in Saudi Arabia. But that's not the case in the Emirates. In the Emirates, I think there was a death penalty imposed for treason a couple of years ago, I believe it was, but the death penalty is exceedingly rare in the Emirates. And I was very surprised when I first arrived there and didn't know very much about what to expect. It never occurred to me that we would have students at the university who would get caught with drugs, but we did. And then I thought, oh my gosh, the first time that happened, what's going to happen to them? Well, they went to jail initially, but then after a few weeks, the ruler said, send them home to their parents and let them take care of them. So, at least in the Emirates and in Kuwait, it's not so much the draconian punishment. In Saudi Arabia, that may have more impact.
What was the percentage makeup of male-female students, and also what was the predominant field of study?
The makeup of male and female at the American University of Sharjah and in the others was roughly 50-50. And I have to say, generally the female students were better than the male students. And at the American University of Sharjah in particular, the overwhelming discipline of choice is engineering. To the Arab family, engineering is what going to med school is for an American family. Engineering is far and away the most prestigious discipline to study and field to be in. Now, I might mention curiously, at one point, Iraq had a very fine medical education system. Saddam Hussein pretty much ruined that. But as a result of that fact, many of the very well-trained Iraqi doctors moved to other countries in the Gulf region, so that in the Emirates, most of the doctors were Iraqis, often female. And I had the unique experience as an American of going into the doctor's office, being met at the door by someone who would serve a cup of tea, and before you would get a chance to sit down in the chair, the doctor would come out and greet you and take you back to be tended to. None of this sitting in the doctor's office for 2 hours before you get to see the physician. Well, the reason for that was there are many doctors, and doctors don't make nearly the incomes on a comparative basis that physicians would make in the United States or in most other Western countries.
In our company, we hire mechanical engineers, and we've had them from that part of the world, China and India particularly. And we have found a trend that there is a real lack of creative thinking. That if you tell them, copy this, they're great at that. But if you say, here's the problem, solve it, they get caught up. Did you experience that?
I think that's true to some extent, because in many of the institutions, educational institutions, there tends to be a reliance on rote learning. And that's one of the things that the American institutions try very hard to get away from. So if you were to get a graduate from the American University of Sharjah, I think you would see quite a difference in the mindset, because one of the things that we always tried to get them to do was think differently, don't necessarily follow authority, discover on your own, solve the problem yourself or get a group together and solve the problem. But I think in the region as a whole, yes, rote learning is still far too much the trend. For example, there's in some of the conservative religious schools, there's a great emphasis on memorizing the Quran. And people, I'm told, do it. Can you imagine what what you or I would feel like if we were told we have to memorize not the whole Bible, but just the New Testament. I can't imagine people being able to do that, but in some fashion, there are people there who memorize the Quran, which I guess is as long as the Bible, certainly longer than the New Testament. Anything else?
One last question. Personally, you have seen the world comparatively for most of us artists. So my question to you is, Thompson, why did you choose, other than you have a business here through Carmen, why did you choose to come back to Conway, Arkansas? Why are we blessed and Pettigene, I think, at one time, but just curious.
It seems more like home than anywhere else. We spent a longer period of time. We know more people. We have more friends in Conway, Arkansas than anywhere else.
Welcome home.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. We have adopted the newspapers in education through the Log Cabin Democrats. So in August, when the schools come back, then we will be donating 50 newspapers in your honor to the local schools. So thank you again for being our guest today. Thank you, Roger. I think the sign-up sheet is still going around, so if you have not signed it, it's up there. Thank you. If you know somebody that needs to sign up, please let me or Michael know that today. It's kind of important that we make sure that we are well prepared for our banquet next week. I want to say thank you for a wonderful year, and I'll say more of this at the banquet, but thank you for entrusting me to be your president this year. And I'm going to call Pat Freeman to lead our four-way test. Mr. Pat.
Of the things